New information today showing it may not just be a personal vendetta. This is actually an investigation that was ongoing, that had already been initiated under the Biden administration. John Bolton was already in hot water. Why? Because John Bolton got a little sloppy, allegedly, with his emails. This is the headline in the New York Times today. John Bolton, inquiry eyes emails obtained by foreign government. It is not clear what country intercepted Mr. Bolton's private emails. I'm betting on Iran, but hey. But the investigation into President Trump's former national security advisor picked up momentum under the Biden administration. So, forgive me, this is the problem with not having any commercial breaks. Sometimes I have to gulp my water live on the set or refresh my lipstick, right? Transparency. Anyway, so Bolton basically is now in trouble because, this is my conjecture, I think that he was probably emailing some stuff on his book, his really boring book. I mean, don't take my word for it. The New York Times was like tortured to have to read this. They gave a terrible review. They said it was like completely long-winded. He just kept rambling, and occasionally it sounded like he was really off his rocker. they were brutal to him in the review. But anyway, maybe as he was trying to shop this book, it's quite possible that he was sending what we call in the industry a treatment. When you want to write a book, you usually put together what's called a treatment, and you send that to a book agent. So you might have a thesis, and then you've got an outline of some chapters, and you may have some tidbits of information in there. And I have no particular knowledge. This is all conjecture. I'm speculating at this point because I'm trying to make sense of how these emails were intercepted, and maybe he was a little sloppy. So maybe he actually sent some of this book material onto a book agent, and then one of the foreign governments, China, Iran, whoever it would have been, one of those spy agencies intercepted perhaps the book agent's email because it would not have been as secure, hopefully, as John Bolton's would have been. Although, John, I'll tell you about John. You could be walking down the street, and this happened to me actually at, it was the RNC. I was anchoring at the RNC event for Fox Business, and I remember it was me and Lou Dobbs. Poor Neil had just had a quintuple bypass or something. It was, so they said, Trish, can you fill in and do primetime every night? And I said, sure. And, I would come on right after Lou, and I'd always convince him to stick around with me for an hour or so. We had a good time. But that was the RNC event. And I remember at one point walking down the street, and Bolton's like coming towards me, and he's like in La La Land. And like, we know each other, right? We're working together regularly. He'd probably been on the show the night before. And I'm like, and I'm full hair and makeup. I'm there with my producer, and I'm like, hi. He I don't think he saw me. He seemed at some point, he was like, hi, and it almost seemed like he was in another world. And he had no one with him. He was kind of like a mad professor. And so I was like, gee, it's sort of strange. Like, you kind of think that John Bolton would be a little bit more on his game, but no, I think he was kind of like off in the clouds sometimes. And maybe he was a little sloppy. Remember the time that he was in the meeting with the president, the press briefing, and he had on his notebook something about 10,000 troops to Colombia? And everybody was like, what is that he had scribbled on? He just let everybody see it? Again, it's sort of mad professor, right? Like not paying attention to his surroundings, not really like, maybe he's a little on the spectrum. He doesn't really get, I think he must be, because he's never met a war he doesn't like. Really, he's very, very much about being so aggressive. And I'm always like, diplomacy, money. Use your financial tools. He's like, why use your financial tools? I'm like, because then you don't lose lives, right? We've had this argument before, Bolton and me. Anyway, the point being, he's now being exposed as having already been under investigation. The New York Times says that they were beginning to pick up momentum on an investigation during the Biden administration when U.S. officials collected information that appeared to show that he had mishandled classified information. Okay, the U.S. gathered data from an adversarial country's spy service, including emails with sensitive information about Mr. Bolton while still working in the first Trump administration. It appeared to have been sent to people close to him on an unclassified system. So close to him. So maybe it was, producers at Fox, if he was going to go on and do a television show. Maybe it was book people. I don't know. Maybe it was his friends and family. But you can't do that. Right? Like you can't actually use classified information. And apparently he was speaking to all of them about these sensitive things, and this is what has come out. Now, this is important, guys, because you know what? It totally complicates what the left is trying to say. They're trying to say this is nothing but a vendetta. So think twice about that, because as the Times reports, while those searches have raised fresh questions, you had the big raid the other day, about the extent to which Mr. Trump may be using the Justice Department and the FBI to try to punish those that he dislikes, the new details in the case present a more complex chain of events. I love the way they phrase that, right? Only the New York Times. I'm just going to tell you what they mean. Here's what they mean. It's not just a complex chain of events. It's the reality that John Bolton had classified information that he was treating willy-nilly, that he was emailing around. And not only did Trump know it, Biden knew it, and he was under investigation. Okay, so this is not a vendetta like the left would like you to believe. The disclosures, they write, suggest that a long-running investigation into Mr. Bolton's activities changed over time, with some of the issues echoing past inquiries into the handling of national security secrets. They go on to talk about the emails in question, and they say that the people who got this appeared to derive from classified documents that he had been sending to them when he was national security advisor. Oh, was he working on his book then? I don't know, but they say Mr. Bolton apparently sent the messages to people close to him who were helping him gather material that he would ultimately use in his 2020 memoir. What'd I tell you? The book agent. I don't know that for fact, but I'm betting like he's working on his book, his really, really boring book that nobody actually likes and nobody actually read. And it's kind of funny that he was there gathering all this information. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but for his book, and that this is what's bringing him down. The book that nobody read, okay? Nobody read it. So headline, guess what? It's not Trump, even though everybody wants to say it is. I mean, Vance tried to explain this to NBC News the other day, remember?
I do want to start with some breaking news. We've learned that the FBI is searching the home of former Ambassador John Bolton, his office as well.
Sure.
Can you tell me, why is the FBI raiding Ambassador Bolton's home and office? And did the White House get a heads up?
Well, so we're in the very early stages of an ongoing investigation into John Bolton. I will say we're going to let that investigation proceed. What I can tell you is that unlike the Biden DOJ and the Biden FBI, our law enforcement agencies are going to be driven by law and not by politics. And so if we think that Ambassador Bolton has committed a crime, of course, eventually prosecutions will come. But as you know, Kristen, this is all part of gathering evidence, trying to understand something that we're worried about. And of course, I'll let the FBI comment on the next stage of the investigation.
What's at the root of this? Is this about classified documents?
Well, again, I'll let the FBI speak to that. Classified documents are certainly part of it, but I think that there's a broad concern about Ambassador Bolton. They're going to look into it. And like I said, if there's no crime here, we're not going to prosecute it. If there is a crime here, of course, Ambassador Bolton will get his day in court. That's how it should be. But again, our focus here is on, did he break the law? Did he commit crimes against the American people? If so, then he deserves to be prosecuted.
As we have this conversation, has Ambassador Bolton been detained, taken into custody, arrested in any form?
So this news just broke this morning, and the FBI, I haven't talked to the FBI this morning. I don't know the answer to that question. I assume that he hasn't been detained and won't be detained until there's a prosecution, if that actually happens.
As you know, Ambassador Bolton is a frequent critic of President Trump's.
Here we go.
He's also on Kash Patel's enemies list. The administration has already revoked his security clearance, Secret Service protection. Is Ambassador Bolton being targeted because he's a critic of President Trump?
No, not at all. And in fact, if we were trying to do that, we would just throw out prosecutions willy-nilly like the Biden administration DOJ did, prosecutions that later got thrown out in court. If we bring a case, and of course we haven't done that yet, the Department of Justice has not done that yet. We are investigating Ambassador Bolton, but if they ultimately bring a case, it will be because they determine that he has broken the law. We're going to be careful about that. We're going to be deliberate about that because we don't think that we should throw people, even if they disagree with us politically, maybe especially if they disagree with us politically. You shouldn't throw people willy-nilly in prison. You should let the law drive these determinations, and that's what we're doing.
But you know, a lot of people have already looked at this and said this looks a lot like retribution. Is this retribution?
Well, who has said it looks a lot like retribution, Kristen? A lot of people who tried to throw Donald Trump in prison for completely fake charges that were later thrown out by multiple different courts. I suspect that if the media and the American people let this case actually unfold, if they let the investigation unfold as it's currently doing, they're going to find out that what we're doing is being very deliberate and being very driven by the national interest and by the law here. And that's as it should be.
Exactly. You know, I got to tell you, this is why I can never be a politician. Do you know how annoyed I would be with those questions? How many times do you tell her it was not about retribution? I guess he couldn't tell her that the guy was already under investigation by the Biden administration. You know who should have known that but didn't bother saying anything was Andy McCabe, who went on to CNN and was like, oh, yeah, well, you know, this is what we all think it is. It's just Trump being Trump. What a loser.
Yeah, right. He went through the process. The question is who approved it. And that was, you're right, that was a big point of contention in Trump 1. Andy, I want to bring you back in and just put up some of the quotes that John was referring to from the current heads of the Justice Department and FBI. This is Pam Bondi, 7:45 a.m. America's safety isn't negotiable. Justice will be pursued always. During the raid. Kash Patel post 7:03 a.m. No one is above the law. FBI agents on a mission. How unusual is that kind of post from the heads of the law enforcement agencies in America while this high-profile raid is going on?
I can't think of another FBI director or attorney general, and I worked for many of them, who would have done something similar. This is just simply not the way Department of Justice employees at the department or the bureau operate. We understand.
Ooh, I'm sorry. What happened when they raided Mar-a-Lago? Weren't they all bragging about it? Didn't they take special pictures and release them all? But whatever, Andy, you keep going because you're going to just dig yourself in further.
That there's all kinds of unfavorable attention and reputation impact that comes along with having something happen like what's happening at John Bolton's house right now. In the past, DOJ leadership has always taken the role like we don't go out of our way to draw suspicion or castigate people unless we are doing it officially in court in the form of an indictment and then going into court and proving our case. They speak through the court filings, and that is it. So I think what you're seeing from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino is pretty typical for them, but it is absolutely atypical for anyone else who's ever served in those roles. And I think it really degrades the Bureau and the department's image and legitimacy in the way that they are so blatantly trying to generate social media attention for themselves at the expense of not just the people who are being investigated, but also the investigators who are doing that work. I can't think of anyone at the FBI who would call attention to a search warrant while it's taking place. I mean, you never want tactically.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay? Sorry. I actually bailed on that soundbite earlier than I wanted to. But I wanted to remind you of something because he brought up my friend Bongino. And you know what? Dan Bongino, salt of the earth guy, didn't need to take this job. Believe me, he had a very successful show and was making a ton of money on his wonderful Bongino Report show. He did not need this gig. But you know what? When the president called, he answered. And you know what else? He is a man of principle. And he may have been friends with John Bolton. I mean, like I said, we all worked with him. I don't know if John was really friends with anyone, though. I mean, if I'm being honest. But Dan's a good guy, right? And Dan made it clear about 8 weeks ago that something was coming. I mean, he put Letitia on notice. We didn't know it at the time, but Bolton on notice. He almost put the 37 people that just lost their intel clearance all on notice. Hello. Dan called it. Watch.
Are you going to be looking into, Kash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg or Nathan Wade or Fani Willis and the DOJ? Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. The FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your, partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of, I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make, I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure.
No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife, I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. If
you want a friend in D.C., get a dog.
We're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. You want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a Labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends in D.C. You've been doing this, 30 years? There are no friends here.
Okay, so I think the big takeaway from that, and I know like some of you got annoyed with Bongino over, some of the other stuff. I'm just going to tell you, I trust the guy. I really do. Because he's like, I can count on one hand the people in television, kid you not, that are just good, really like straight up people, and he's one of them. So I'm going to take him at his word, and he's saying there's more to come. And I'm pretty darn sure there's more to come. Okay, because now we've just learned that Bolton was in trouble. They were trying to spin this up. Oh, by the way, did I tell you he got Abby Lowell? Abby Lowell, who's making a killing. Man, oh man, he's riding this one all the way to the bank. He must have voted for Trump, for goodness sakes. Like, he's got family wealth he's going to generate off of this boondoggle, right? Everybody getting in all kinds of trouble because they did some really shady things. Allegedly. It's going to come out. And it's going to be proven, and we're going to know exactly what went down.